Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I never thought moving off campus would feel like a mistake. Sophomore year had just started, and for the first time everything felt wide open, like we were finally breathing on our own. Freedom smelled like old IKEA furniture, dollar store air fresheners, and the unmistakable scent of instant ramen. No more passive-aggressive RA writing us up for whispering past midnight. No more shared showers or mystery stains in the hallway. Our new place was a squat, boxy beige rental on a quiet street a mile from campus. The siding was chipped and the screen door groaned like it had arthritis, but it was ours. It was me, Harper, and two girls I'd gotten close with during freshman year, Mallory and Jess. We weren't ride or die exactly, but we'd weathered the worst of dorm life together. Bathroom mildew, cafeteria meatloaf, stress cramming at 3 a.m. That counted for something. At first everything felt perfect. We were out. Independent. The house even had a scrappy little backyard with a broken lawn chair and a grill rusted shut from years of neglect. We kept promising we'd use it someday, though none of us knew how to grill. On warm afternoons, we'd prop the front door open and let the house fill with music. Laundry would pile up in the hallway while we danced barefoot in our socks. The kind of simple joy that made you forget you were broke and exhausted. But it didn't take long for the vibe to shift. Mallory had always been the wild one. Loud, magnetic. She could walk into a room and suck all the air out of it in the best way. She was the life of the party without even trying. At first, it was just weed and cheap vodka, stuff we all dabbled in. Then came the acid tabs, the Adderall, the little baggies that showed up without explanation. She fell in with a new group, guys from off-campus housing who wore expensive hoodies and had a too-casual relationship with harder drugs. Jess and I weren't saints, but we knew our limits. After a couple of gnarly hangovers and one terrifying night where Mallory vanished until dawn and came home with no memory of where she'd been or how she got back, Jess and I quietly stepped back. Mallory didn't. Something changed in her. Fast. She got twitchy, short-fused. Her mood swung hard, laughing one minute, snapping over a spoon left in the sink the next. She picked fights over nothing. Who forgot to buy toilet paper? Who left the porch light on? Her eyes started to look strange. Too wide, too shiny. Like she wasn't looking at you, but through you, past you, toward something that wasn't there. By February, everything cracked open. It was a bitter Saturday night. No snow on the ground, but the air had claws, sharp enough to sting your face raw. There was some party downtown, one of those half-baked themed things a friend of a friend was throwing. We were all supposed to go. Jess was excited, already half-dressed in sparkles and eyeliner. I bailed early. I had an opening shift at the campus bookstore the next morning and zero patience for cheap beer and sweaty strangers. Jess promised they'd stick together, like always. That was our only hard rule. Nobody walked home alone. But when I got back around midnight, the house was still dark. I figured they were just staying late, maybe crashing with someone. I threw on a hoodie and passed out. I didn't hear a thing. When I woke up, Jess was already in the kitchen. She looked like she hadn't slept, eyes red-rimmed, knuckles white around a mug of coffee. She barely said anything at first, just sat there, breathing like it hurt. Then she told me. Mallory had ditched her. One minute they were dancing and the next Mallory was gone. Disappeared with some random guy Jess didn't recognize. Jess waited, texted, waited more. Finally, scared and pissed, she walked home alone. I told her, Jess said, voice hollow. I told her that wasn't okay. I wasn't even mad, just freaked out. Then she handed me her phone. The messages were insane, screens full of vitriol. Mallory had gone off, called Jess a controlling little bitch, accused her of being jealous, of trying to sabotage her fun. It was brutal, like a bomb going off in slow motion. We laughed at first, nervous laughter, the kind that doesn't feel funny. It was just so over the top, like she wasn't even speaking in her own voice. But the next morning it got worse. Jess was at work at the campus wellness center, just folding towels, minding her business, when Mallory stormed in, full volume, full fury. She screamed across the lobby, people froze, phones came out, campus security had to walk her out. Jess told me later her hands wouldn't stop shaking for hours. And the weirdest part? Mallory's mom was there, standing by the door the whole time, silent. She didn't say a single word, just watched, like she wasn't even surprised. I was in class when it all went down. When I got home, Jess was curled up on her bed, knees to her chest. Her door was open like she wanted someone to check on her but couldn't bring herself to ask. Downstairs, Mallory was pacing back and forth like she was stuck in a loop. Her mom sat rigid on the couch, staring ahead like she was trying not to see anything at all. I tried to make myself a grilled cheese, pretending everything was normal. The bread was already in the pan, butter hissing softly against the metal, and I was focused, deliberately focused, on flipping it just right. I needed the act of normalcy like oxygen. But the second I turned around, Mallory was there, blocking the kitchen entrance. Her eyes were feral, unfocused, like she was seeing something behind me instead of me. "She's dead to me," she hissed, the words practically foaming out of her mouth. "After everything I've done for her." I didn't say anything. I just nodded slowly, inching sideways. My pulse was hammering, my skin prickling with something ancient, fear so raw it bypassed logic. My body felt it before my brain caught up. I backed away, careful not to make any sudden moves, and disappeared into my room. I locked the door and slid down against it, trying to steady my breathing. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the fridge, my heartbeat. Then I heard the front door. Jess was back. She was crying, soft broken sobs into her phone. I could hear her in the living room, trying to explain to her mom what had happened at work, how Mallory had humiliated her in front of everyone, how no one stepped in. Then came the shouting. "Don't come in here acting like you're some victim," Mallory bellowed from somewhere down the hall. "You abandoned me. I could have been hurt last night." Jess didn't flinch this time. Her voice came back strong, shaking but clear. "You left me. You disappeared with some rando and didn't even check if I got home safe." It spiraled so fast, I barely had time to react. I cracked my door open just in time to see Mallory storm down the hallway toward Jess, fists clenched. Jess turned and bolted for her room. Mallory lunged. I heard the sickening thud of the door slamming on Jess's hand, and then Jess's scream. Sharp, real, gut-level pain. Her mom stood in the hallway, frozen like a statue. "Danielle, please," she whispered, her voice trembling, thin and useless. It wasn't a command. It was a plea, like she was begging an animal not to bite. I rushed in, grabbed Jess. She was cradling her hand, sobbing, barely able to walk, and pulled her toward the front door. We made it to the porch, breathless and shaking. Then we heard her. "Put that down!" Her mother shrieked from inside. We froze. The door slammed open. Mallory stepped out, barefoot, wild-eyed, panting like she'd been running. Her pupils were blown wide, and in her hand was one of our kitchen knives. Not a little one. A full-sized chef's knife. The kind we only ever used when we were pretending to cook something fancy. "I'm gonna fucking kill you," she screamed, raising the knife like it weighed nothing. I don't remember making the choice, my body just moved. I grabbed her wrist with both hands, twisting and forcing the blade down. We struggled, slamming into the porch railing. Her strength caught me off guard. Erratic, unpredictable. The knife clattered onto the cold, dead grass. I kicked it away and yelled, "Run!" to Jess, who was already halfway down the driveway, limping, holding her hand to her chest. But Mallory didn't follow us. She turned and darted back into the house. I followed, stupid, adrenaline drunk, just enough to see her in the kitchen drawer again. This time, she pulled out a smaller knife, thinner, sharper. And then she looked at me. Really looked at me. "Want to watch me bleed?" she asked, calm now. Too calm. The knife pressed to the soft skin of her throat. You want that, huh? Danielle, her mother cried out from the hallway, her voice cracked. Please, baby, don't. I stood frozen. The look in Mallory's eyes wasn't a performance, it wasn't attention-seeking. It was empty, bottomless, like the last flicker of something human had blinked out. The edges of everything blurred. My ears were ringing. I don't remember how we got back outside. Just that we were running, Jess's hand in mine, down the middle of the street like kids fleeing a burning house. I pounded on the neighbor's door. They answered in seconds. The woman didn't ask questions. She just wrapped Jess's bleeding hand in a dish towel. Her husband called 911. The whole time we could still hear Mallory's howls coming from inside the house. Animalistic, guttural sounds that didn't belong to her or anyone. The police arrived. A crisis team came with them. They took Mallory away in restraints. She didn't resist, just stared at the ground with a dazed smile, like she was already somewhere else. We gave statements. We didn't go back to that house for 2 weeks. And when we did, it was only to pack. The place felt cold, hollow, not haunted by ghosts, but by what had cracked open inside it, by the memory of watching someone unravel, completely violently, in a space we once thought of as home. Later, I found out that Mallory had suffered a full psychotic break. The drugs, the stress, an undiagnosed condition, everything collided in the worst way possible. Her mother had tried to intervene, but she'd been too scared of her own daughter. Jess and I moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was quiet. We focused on finishing the semester, on not falling apart. I still think about her sometimes, about the girl I first met in a dorm hallway, laughing over burnt popcorn and wearing glittery socks, about the nights we danced barefoot in our crappy little kitchen. And I think about the porch, that one terrible second where I knew she was going to kill someone, and my body had to act before my mind could catch up. Since then, I've learned a lot about trauma, about mental illness, about what it means to trust your gut even when it feels wrong to assume the worst. But mostly, I've learned how fast someone you think you know can become someone you don't, a stranger in their own skin. Sometimes all it takes is a quiet house and one very, very bad night. I was 32 when everything collapsed. You don't imagine at that age that you'll be back at the beginning. No savings, no plan, no real direction. Not after a marriage, a mortgage, 10 years of shared holidays and routines. But there I was, folding shirts into a single suitcase in the bedroom my wife and I once slept in. The room felt hollow, like it had already started forgetting we were ever in it. By the end, we barely spoke. She'd walk past me like I was furniture. Our 4th anniversary passed with nothing but a distracted nod. And then one day, the silence just stayed. No arguments, no thrown dishes, just exhaustion. The divorce wasn't ugly, but it was a slow bleed. Lawyers took their chunk. The bank circled like a vulture, and when the dust settled, we were both left standing in the wreckage with not much to show. She moved out first. I stayed a few weeks longer, sorting out bills, forwarding mail, tossing out things that once meant something. I thought I'd feel a sense of finality when I closed the front door that last time. Instead, I felt this weird, aching cold that started in my chest and stayed there. To make matters worse, my job was on the chopping block. Layoffs were rolling through the company like a quiet plague. Every Friday, more empty desks. I could feel my name getting closer to the top of the list. The thought of signing a lease in that uncertainty felt reckless. Most of my friends had kids or cramped apartments, and I wasn't ready to crash at my parents' place again. So I did what you do when your life is unraveling and you're out of better ideas. I went on Craigslist. The listing sounded too good to be real. Short-term rental, furnished room, private bath, quiet house. Rent was only $800, utilities included. In this city, that was almost laughable. It screamed, scam. But the photos seemed real enough. Slightly crooked angles, dated furniture, nothing glossy. I sent a message anyway. A guy named Alan replied within the hour, said the room was still open, and I could swing by that evening to check it out. Normally, I'd second-guess a same-day showing with a stranger, but I was running low on caution and energy. The house was on a sleepy street in the southeast, the kind of neighborhood that still got trick-or-treaters. Tall, narrow trees lined the sidewalk. The home itself was old, maybe pre-war, converted into separate rentals on each floor. Alan met me at the door. He looked to be in his late 50s. Tall, thin, silver hair slicked back like he'd been doing it the same way for 40 years. His voice was rough, like gravel in a blender, but there was something laid back about him. Not warm exactly, just normal. The room was better than I expected. Ground floor, a big window with sun filtering in through slatted blinds. Queen bed, small couch, desk against the wall. The attached bathroom wasn't fancy, but it was clean. It felt lived in, not staged, but not gross either. A little worn. Temporary, but okay. All utilities included, Alan said, leaning against the doorframe. Month to month. No lease. People come and go. It's the way it is now. That should have raised more red flags than it did. But I nodded. What about the other tenants? Nice couple upstairs, German, young, and a guy in the basement. Keeps to himself. I should have asked more, but I was tired. My back hurt from sleeping in the car. And honestly, I just wanted somewhere that didn't smell like old fast food wrappers. I gave him a bank draft and moved in 2 days later. The German couple, Marcia and Felix, introduced themselves right away. Early 20s, bright-eyed, thick accents, the kind of people who still thought America was exciting. They made way too much spaghetti that first night and insisted I join them. Over dinner, I asked how long they'd been in the house. "A month," Felix said. "Not staying." They exchanged a look. Marcia hesitated, then said softly, "It's not the house. It's someone downstairs." Felix added, "Jim," she said. "What about him?" They didn't answer right away. Felix's fork scraped against his plate. "He's strange. Unsettling," Marcia said. "He watches, says things sometimes. Just odd things." Felix laughed, a little forced. "We just want to feel comfortable, you know?" I nodded, trying to act neutral. That night I locked my bedroom door for the first time in years. Something about the way Marcia said watches stuck with me. 3 days later, they moved out. Alan helped them load boxes into a rideshare, giving them a cheerful wave like they were heading off to college. I stood in the window, watching. The house felt heavier without them. That night, I heard music from the basement for the first time. Not loud, just a low, steady drone of synths and pulsing bass. Something old, industrial, the kind of soundtrack that made you feel like you were underwater or inside a bad dream. I met Jim about a week after moving in. It was late afternoon. I was reheating pizza when I heard someone come up the stairs. No footsteps, just presence. I turned and there he was, standing near the kitchen entrance. No shoes, skinny, pale. He looked younger than I expected, mid-20s maybe, but worn in a way that made him seem older. Patchy beard, eyes too wide, hair like he'd hacked at it with scissors in the bathroom mirror. "Hey," I said. He didn't respond at first, just tilted his head a little, studying me like I was an abstract painting. "You're new," he finally said, voice quiet but sharp. "Yeah, moved in a few days ago." A pause. "They always leave," he murmured, then turned and walked back down the stairs. I stood there for a long minute, staring at the stairwell, the microwave humming behind me. Suddenly, the idea of finishing my pizza felt absurd. "I'm Ian," I said, offering a casual smile, trying to smooth out the weird tension lingering in the air. "Jim," he replied without turning to face me. His voice was dry and flat, like sandpaper dragged over glass. He opened a cabinet, grabbed a glass, filled it with tap water, and drank it in slow, steady gulps while I stood by the microwave, awkwardly clutching a paper plate. "You knew?" he asked finally, eyes still fixed on the kitchen counter. "Yeah, about a week now," I said, watching him over the rim of my coffee mug. He gave a small nod, barely a twitch of his chin, and said nothing else. I tried to keep things moving, threw out a few casual questions. What he did for work, how long he'd lived in the house, if he liked it. But every question I asked seemed to slip right past him. He deflected or gave one-word answers like we were in a bad job interview neither of us wanted to be in. After 5 uncomfortable minutes, he walked away. No goodbye, no acknowledgement. Just turned and slipped down the basement stairs like smoke retreating under a door. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Figured he was just a loner. I've known people like that. Quiet types, socially off-kilter, maybe carrying some mental health stuff. Not everyone is built for conversation. Being weird isn't a crime. Then the police showed up. I was in bed reading when I heard it. 2 sharp knocks at the front door. Then a voice loud and firm. "Police, open the door." My stomach dropped. I froze, my book slipping from my hands. I cracked my bedroom door and peered into the hallway. 2 officers stood there, calm but alert. One of them, Officer Brooks, stepped forward. "We're investigating a reported theft. Your housemate Jim claims some of his belongings are missing. He said he suspects you." I stared at them, stunned. "What?" I barely even know the guy. They asked if they could search my room. My mouth was dry, but I said yes. I had nothing to hide, or so I thought. They opened my closet and pulled out an old shoebox from the back corner. Inside, a wallet, a pair of earbuds, and a small flash drive. None of it mine. "I didn't put that there," I said, chest tightening. "I swear to God, that's not mine." The officers exchanged a look. They didn't cuff me, didn't drag me out. Just made notes, told me not to contact Jim, and left. But the way they looked at me, that heavy, silent judgment, made my skin crawl. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours. My pulse wouldn't slow down, my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I knew exactly what had happened. Jim had planted those things. Why? I didn't know. Maybe to scare me off, maybe for something worse. But one thing was certain. He wanted me gone. The next morning I stood outside his door, fist raised. There was music playing on the other side, some distorted ambient noise, like a haunted machine breathing in slow loops. I knocked. No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. I thought about shouting, about kicking the door, but some instinct told me not to escalate it. I turned and went back to my room, locked the door, and shoved a chair under the knob. That entire week I lived like a prisoner. I only left my room when I had to. Used the bathroom with the door cracked open so I could hear if anyone was nearby. I stopped cooking. Lived off granola bars and gas station sandwiches. I barely slept. Then one night, I woke to a soft click. The sound of a doorknob turning. Mine. I held my breath. My body froze, heart racing like a siren in my chest. Another faint jiggle at the handle. I grabbed the heaviest thing I had, an old hardcover book, and crept to the door. The knob twitched again. I yanked it open. Jim stood there, pale, wild-eyed, his hand still resting on the doorknob. He looked startled, like a kid caught stealing candy. "Sorry," he muttered. "Wrong door." I didn't blink. "Don't ever come near my room again." He mumbled something, another half-hearted apology, and slinked back down the stairs, barefoot and silent as before. I called Alan the next morning. "Jim planted stuff in my closet," I told him. "He tried to get into my room last night. This is serious." Alan sighed, like I'd just told him the dryer was broken. "Look, I'll talk to him. But it's a shared house, man. You've got a lock. That's all I can offer." That was it. That was the moment I knew I had to get out. Every lunch break I scoured rental sites, messaged landlords, asked co-workers if they knew any short-term places. I would have taken a closet with a door at that point, anything to get out. But Jim wasn't done. A few nights later, I came home late after drinks with a friend. The house was quiet, lights off. I stepped inside and flicked the hallway light on. Jim was there, standing just a few feet away, hands trembling, eyes bloodshot, his whole body vibrating like he was running on adrenaline and spite. "You told Alan lies," he said, voice low and cracked. "I didn't. You think I don't see it? The way you look at me, the way you talk to the others." "There are no others anymore," I snapped. "Everyone's gone because of you." He lunged. It wasn't graceful, more like a drunk falling forward, but he grabbed the back of my neck hard and tried to slam me against the wall. I twisted free, shoved him off, and ran, slammed my bedroom door shut, locked it, called the cops. When they arrived, he didn't even deny it. They took him away. I don't know where. Maybe psych hold, maybe just a cooling off period. I didn't care. I packed what little I owned, scribbled a note for Alan, and left. I didn't look back. A month later, I was in a tiny studio apartment across town. The walls were cracked, the water pressure weak, and every pipe groaned like an old man with bad knees. But it was mine. No roommates, no basement weirdos, no one trying my door handle in the middle of the night. I never found out what was wrong with Jim. Drugs? Schizophrenia? Something else entirely? I didn't want to know. I just wanted peace. But even now, on quiet nights, when the building settles and footsteps echo faintly down the hall, I still get up, still double-check the lock, still wedge a chair under the doorknob just in case. I was 20 when I moved into Belcraft Hall, a squat, tan brick dorm building tucked behind a dead-end road on the east side of Holbrook University in northern Illinois. It was my first year living away from home, but I wasn't some wide-eyed freshman fresh out of high school. I'd spent 2 years after graduation installing HVAC units in houses across the suburbs, hot attics in July, frozen basements in January. I'd saved every dollar I could. By the time I got my acceptance letter, I was more focused than ever. I wasn't there for keg stands or TikToks in the hallway. I was there to work. When you sign up for campus housing, they pair you with a random roommate. You fill out a little survey, likes, habits, preferences, but let's be real. It felt more like a box-checking exercise than anything meaningful. I marked the basics: non-smoker, quiet, serious about school, standard stuff. I wasn't looking for a best friend, just someone I could share a room with and not hate. My assigned roommate was named Shane. When I first opened the door to room 214, he was already there, lying on the bed farthest from the door, one leg crossed over the other, flicking a lighter open and shut in rhythm with the thud of bass from his stereo. His half of the room looked like it had been swallowed by a garage sale. Duct-taped band posters covered the cinder block wall. An ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts sat beside the cracked window, and a stack of massive stereo speakers buzzed faintly in the corner. He sat up as I stepped in. "You the roommate?" he asked without much interest. "Yeah, Ian," I said, holding out my hand. "You must be Shane?" He reached out with a limp grip, dry, a little too light. "Yeah." He looked older than I expected, early 20s, maybe 23. He had this worn-out look, pale skin with shadows under his eyes, shoulder-length greasy black hair tucked behind one ear, and 3 piercings, 2 in his left ear and a silver stud just above his upper lip. His hoodie was faded, something from a metal band I'd never heard of. His black jeans were ripped at the knee and looked like they hadn't been washed in a month. Still, he seemed fine. Maybe a little detached, but not aggressive. While I unpacked, we made the usual awkward small talk, where we were from, what we were studying. It was clear within 10 minutes that we weren't going to have much in common. I liked books, walking late at night with my headphones in, quiet puzzle games on my laptop. Shane was into punk shows, dirt bikes, and drinking. He didn't own a desk lamp or a textbook, just a few packs of rolling papers, a couple half-empty energy drinks on his nightstand, and a Zippo lighter with a skull etched into the side. But whatever. I wasn't looking for a best friend. I just needed someone I could live with. The first couple of weeks went okay. Shane was barely around during the day and usually came back late, sometimes not at all. I figured he was exploring or going to parties. I didn't ask. I slept better when he wasn't there, honestly. The room was quieter. I could breathe. Then his friends started showing up. The first time I met them was on a Friday night. I'd just come back from the dining hall carrying a leftover sandwich in a paper box. I opened the door and walked straight into a thick cloud of weed smoke, heavy and sour. My stomach turned before I even saw them. 3 guys sat scattered across the room, all of them older, mid-30s at least, not students, not even pretending to be. One was massive, bald with a wiry beard, wearing a ripped denim vest over bare skin. His jeans were stained and shredded. Another guy leaned against Shane's dresser, smoking, his long hair tangled and greasy, his leather jacket covered in patches. He had this look in his eye that gave me the chills, like he was always sizing you up, calculating something you didn't want to know. Shane barely glanced at me. "Yo, Ian, you cool if the guys chill for a bit?" I hesitated, still holding the doorknob. "Yeah, sure." I wasn't cool with it. Not at all. They were drinking straight from brown bottles, laughing too loud at some joke I didn't understand. One of them made a clicking sound with his tongue every time someone finished a sentence. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, tried to look busy, but I lasted maybe 3 minutes. The smell was burning my throat, and the way they looked at me, like I was a houseplant that had started talking, was too much. I grabbed my stuff and went next door to Gavin's room. He was a guy I'd met during orientation, the kind of clean-cut pre-med kid who always offered you gum. Later that night, around 1 a.m., I came back. The room was empty, but the smoke still clung to the curtains and the sheets. I opened the window and lay down, staring at the ceiling. That night marked a shift. Shane's friends became a regular thing. At first, once or twice a week. Then it felt like every other night. They never stayed long, maybe an hour or 2. But every time, I'd get this knot in my gut. I'd sit in bed with my headphones on, pretending to study, while they talked about stuff I didn't want to hear. Fights, police, accidents. One night I heard one of them talking about busting open a vending machine, not on campus, somewhere else, but the way they laughed about it made my skin crawl. Another night, the bald guy muttered something about parking lot security cameras and how to avoid them. Shane chuckled and told him to shut up, but it didn't sound like a joke. Shane was changing, getting jumpier, moodier, and the room, our little 12x15 cell, started to feel less like a dorm and more like the waiting room to something worse. Some nights, Shane came in late, later than usual. His eyes would be red and glassy, his hoodie damp around the edges from rain or sweat. He'd mumble to himself as he kicked off his boots, half laughing at things I couldn't hear. Sometimes he'd go straight to the window and push it open, even in freezing wind or rain. He'd stand there, staring out like he was watching something the rest of us couldn't see. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m. The room was cold, and the curtains flapped slightly in the wind. I blinked in the dim light and saw him, standing there at the window, rigid, unmoving, silhouetted by the orange glow of the campus security lights below. "You okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't turn around. Just said, "Yeah, just thinking." Then silence. By morning, he was gone again. Bed empty. Window still cracked open. I stopped asking questions. Eventually, I just stopped sleeping there at all. Most nights, I crashed on Gavin's floor or holed up in the library until sunrise. I told myself it was about studying, but really, I just didn't want to be alone in that room with him, with that feeling. I never told my parents. If I did, they'd worry. Or worse, they'd make me move back home. Commute. I couldn't let that happen. Then came the night everything broke open. It was a Wednesday in November. I remember because I had a midterm early Thursday and had been locked in the study lounge until almost midnight. I was exhausted. My brain felt like a wrung-out sponge. I trudged back toward the dorm, my eyes gritty and half shut. But as I turned the corner into the hallway, I noticed our door was open, just slightly. Inside, Shane and 4 of his friends were sprawled across the floor in a rough circle, beer bottles scattered across the carpet. A strange glass rig sat between them. It looked like a bong but had metal fittings that didn't belong. One guy was licking the edge of a blunt, rolling it slow and deliberate like it was art. The whole room smelled like a mix of weed, cheap cologne, and something sharper. Chemical, acrid, wrong. I froze in the doorway. The bald guy, the big one, looked up first. His eyes were yellowish under the low lamplight. "You the roommate?" he asked, voice rough as gravel. "Yeah," he smiled, showing brown teeth. "You're the quiet type, huh?" "I guess," I said quietly. Shane slouched against his bed frame, lifted a lazy hand toward me. "Ian's chill. He won't say shit." I didn't respond. I just walked in, set my bag down, grabbed my charger, and walked right back out without another word. I spent that night on a stiff lounge couch, hoodie balled up under my head, the vending machines humming louder than usual. At around 3:00 a.m., I heard shouting, loud, sharp, echoing down the hallway like someone had slammed a metal door. Heavy footsteps followed, someone running, more shouting, then quiet, doors slamming, silence. 10 minutes later, campus security arrived, flashlights, radios buzzing. When I returned the next morning, the room was trashed. Empty beer bottles, scattered clothes, ash on the floor. Shane was gone. So were his friends. The smell in the room was awful. Beer, stale weed, and something else. Something like wet ashes or burnt plastic. I opened the window wide and spent 20 minutes picking up trash in silence before heading to class. But Shane didn't come back that night. Or the next. By day 3, I figured he'd been caught in whatever that noise was. Maybe campus security had busted him. Maybe he'd gotten suspended. I tried not to care. But after a full week passed with no sign of him, no texts, no voices in the night, I gave in. I reported him missing. Campus security ran through a checklist. When did I last see him? Who did he hang out with? What were their names? I told them what I could. Descriptions of the guys, ages, looks, clothes. I admitted I didn't know their names. I'd never wanted to. They said they'd look into it. A few days later, 2 actual police officers came by. One of them, Officer Riker, was built like a linebacker and had this stare that could snap bone. He sat across from me, notebook in hand, tapping his pen slowly. "Why didn't you report his friends earlier?" he asked. "I didn't think I had to," I said. "I thought they were just his friends." "You said they weren't students." "No, I don't think so." "Did you ever see them carrying weapons?" "No, but one time I thought I saw something in one guy's coat. Like a handle, but I didn't look close." He nodded and wrote that down. Winter crept in. Final exams came and went. Christmas break. When I came back in January, Shane's bed was still untouched. His drawers were open, clothes gone. The RA stopped by and boxed up the rest. No announcement. No warning. Just one day, his side of the room was empty again. They assigned me a new roommate, Marcus, quiet guy, kept to himself, never had visitors. I was grateful. Spring dragged on. The police stopped following up. The men stopped showing up. Or if they didn't, I never saw them again. No more midnight whispers. No more burned-out windows. Shane was never found. They said they had leads. None of them panned out. I tried to move on, tried to study, sleep, forget. But I couldn't. Sometimes I still see that bald guy's grin when I close my eyes, hear Shane mumbling in his sleep, feel that cold pressure in the air, the weight of dread that used to cling to our room like mildew. Years later, I was flipping through channels late at night and landed on one of those true crime shows. A segment about a missing persons case in Chicago. A string of disappearances. A suspect in his 30s. And there he was, the guy in the leather jacket. Same greasy hair, same smirk, same eyes. Cold, sharp, unreadable. They never mentioned Shane. Maybe he ran off. Maybe he OD'd. Maybe it was something worse. I'll never know. But I remember something he said once, one of the few times we actually talked like people. I had asked him, "How'd you meet those guys anyway?" He didn't look at me, just smiled faintly, like the answer was obvious. They found me. "Where?" I asked. Still staring out the window, he said, "Doesn't matter where. When people want you bad enough, they find you." Then he turned his head slightly, just enough to see me from the corner of his eye. "And sometimes," he added, "they never let go." I was 21 when I moved into that battered old house on Maple Avenue. 4 bedrooms, creaky hardwood floors that groaned under every step, and a porch that leaned so far to one side I half expected it to give out if you leaned too hard. Rent was dirt cheap, $375 each, which felt like a lifesaver for us broke students scraping by in that small Pennsylvania college town. I moved in with 3 other guys. Daniel, my friend since freshman year. Jordan, quiet and laid back but with this ridiculous habit of cooking way more food than any of us could eat. And Marcus, a guy I didn't know well at first but bonded with quickly over late-night video games and gas station runs. The place wasn't fancy by any means. The pipes moaned and rattled whenever someone ran hot water, and the walls were paper thin. You could hear a sneeze clear across the hall. We had this weird, cramped closet tucked right next to the living room that we stuffed full of junk we didn't want cluttering our rooms. Still, it felt like home. There was always music humming somewhere, a constant buzz of conversation or laughter, and somehow we found our rhythm. Then Austin showed up. We met him through Daniel. They'd gone to high school together. One night after some party, Austin tagged along when a group of us came back to the house for drinks. He was loud, cocky, the kind of guy who joked like nothing really mattered, like life was just one big prank. That night, he cracked everyone up, shotgun beers like he was in some frat movie, then crashed on the couch with a grin plastered across his face, snoring like a freight train. I didn't think much of it then. A couple weeks later, Daniel mentioned Austin was getting kicked out of his apartment. He didn't say why, just some vague talk about roommate drama. We didn't have a spare bedroom, but Daniel suggested that weird closet near the living room. Not ideal, he admitted, but big enough for a mattress. "He's desperate, man," Daniel said. So we cleared the closet out. Honestly, I was surprised how roomy it was once we dumped all the junk. No windows, just a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling and an outlet that sparked when I plugged in the vacuum. "Wait, he's actually going to live in there?" I asked. Marcus just shrugged. "He pays rent. Who cares?" So Austin moved in. At first, it was kind of fun. He was always down for a beer or a late-night movie marathon. He made the best grilled cheese at 2 a.m. and had this way of pulling you into conversations whether you wanted to talk or not. His stories were wild. Some of them sounded totally made up, but somehow you wanted to believe him anyway. But then things started to shift. A few weeks in, Austin didn't seem to go to class anymore, even though he kept saying he was still enrolled. He was always broke but somehow never ran out of weed. His corner of the house started smelling weird, stale smoke, sweat, something chemical. We avoided going near his room. He kept the door shut most of the time anyway. Then the little things began. Jordan noticed cash disappearing. $20 here and there, small enough to feel off, but not enough to confront Austin about. One day I came home and saw my laptop had been moved slightly on my desk, like someone had picked it up and set it down without care. Daniel's PlayStation controller vanished for a few days, only to show up in the living room out of place. Marcus found one of his textbooks missing, then returned with a crease in the spine he swore wasn't there before. We all started watching each other quietly, locking doors more often, marking bills, checking drawers. Austin just laughed it off. "You guys are paranoid," he said one night, feet propped on the coffee table. "Think I'm casing the place?" No one answered, but we all thought it. The real turning point came one Thursday afternoon. I got home from class and went to check the mail like usual. Mostly junk, pizza coupons, grocery flyers, a credit card offer. But one envelope caught my eye. My name was on it and the seal was already broken. Inside was a brand new credit card with my name printed clearly on it. I froze, staring at the envelope in my hand. I hadn't applied for anything. Not recently. Not ever at this address. My heart started racing as I dialed the number on the card. The woman on the other end sounded calm, almost bored, as she explained that an online application had been submitted a week ago, using my full name, birth date, and current address. I canceled the card immediately. My stomach twisted into knots. Then I remembered the folder. I'd left it in my desk drawer for that internship application. Copies of my passport, my social security number, everything someone would need. The drawer hadn't been locked. Hell, my bedroom door hadn't even been shut half the time that week. That night, I pulled Daniel and Marcus aside in the kitchen. "I think we need to talk to Austin," I said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Why? What's going on?" I held up the torn envelope. Someone opened my mail. Someone used my info to apply for a credit card. I didn't tell anyone this, but I had personal documents in my room. They were left out. Jordan, standing at the fridge, spoke up, voice low. "Maybe there's another explanation," he offered, but there was no conviction behind the words. Austin came back around 9. He was humming something, swinging a plastic bag of fast food in one hand like he didn't have a care in the world. We were waiting for him in the living room. "Hey man," I started, trying to sound casual. "Did you see any mail for me today? There was a letter that got opened." Before I could finish, he snapped. "What the fuck are you saying, huh?" he shouted, his voice slicing through the room like glass. "That I'm stealing from you now?" His face flushed deep red, jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grind. "I'm not accusing," I said carefully, hands open in front of me. "I'm just asking. Someone applied for a credit card in my name. Someone opened my mail." "Shocked about your mail?" he sneered, stepping toward me. He kept walking, his boots thudding on the old wood floor, until he was right over me. His fists were clenched. His chest was puffed out like he was daring me to breathe wrong. "Stand up," he growled. "Say it to my face." I didn't move. "I'm not going to fight you, Austin." He didn't care. He grabbed the collar of my hoodie and yanked me halfway off the couch before I could react. My balance shifted. My knee buckled. Then Marcus shot up and shoved him off. Austin stumbled back, caught his footing, and threw a wild, blind punch right into Daniel's jaw. That was it. Instinct kicked in. We all jumped him at once. There was no plan, just adrenaline. Shouting, shoving, a tangle of limbs. Eventually, he went still beneath us, chest heaving. We let him go. He didn't say a word, just stood up, face unreadable, and stormed out. The front door slammed so hard behind him the frame cracked. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jordan stood off to the side, pale and still. Daniel rubbed his jaw, wincing. We changed the locks first thing the next morning. Then Austin vanished. Days passed. No texts, no calls. No one saw him around campus. I tried to let it go. I filed a report about the fraud, called the police, gave them what little info I had. But without direct proof, they couldn't do much. They gave me a number for some financial crimes unit and sent me on my way. For a while, the house was quiet again, and for a moment I let myself believe that maybe that was it. Maybe it was over. Then came the night. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound I'll never forget. The front door creaking open. Not a bang, not a knock. Just a long, slow groan of old hinges moving in the dark. I held my breath. My room was cold, the kind of cold that settles under your skin when something's wrong. Footsteps started up the stairs, heavy, measured. My door slammed open. It was Austin. He didn't say anything, just crossed the room in a few long strides, grabbed me by the arm, and yanked me straight out of bed. My shoulder cracked against the floorboard. The pain stole the breath from my lungs. I shouted. Marcus and Daniel came tearing in, both of them crashing into Austin, trying to pull him off. He fought back harder than before, clawed, twisted, snarled like an animal cornered. Somehow, we got him pinned again. I scrambled for my phone, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. This time we pressed charges. When the police searched his room, the tiny space off the living room, they found a blue plastic bin tucked beneath his mattress. Inside, used needles, a scorched spoon, disposable lighters, a small scale, and dozens of little baggies. Heroin, meth, pills none of us could identify. One of the officers shook his head. "You guys are lucky," he muttered. "This could have gone a hell of a lot worse." I didn't feel lucky. I felt violated, exposed. He was sentenced to a short jail term, not long enough, but enough to get him out of our lives. We sealed that closet shut again, turned it back into storage. None of us ever went in there after that. By the end of the semester, Austin had officially dropped out. Word was he'd moved to West Virginia to live with a cousin. I never checked, never wanted to know. Sometimes, though, I still wake up around 3-1 a.m., heart pounding, ears straining in the dark, just to make sure the front door is still closed, still locked. Because now I know something I didn't before. Sometimes danger doesn't knock. Sometimes it's already inside. I didn't realize just how unsafe I'd been until years later, after time and distance helped me see things clearly, and Natalie, my sister, finally told me everything. Back then, I was just a high school sophomore, 15, turning 16 that spring. My world was already messy. Our mom was stuck in a toxic spiral with her boyfriend, Steve, a guy who treated me like a personal inconvenience. It didn't matter what I did, how I spoke, how I chewed, how I breathed. Steve seemed perpetually irritated by my existence. Natalie had moved out by then. She was 22, 7 years older than me, and living in a rental house a couple towns over with her fiancé, Josh. They had roommates, people they'd found online. Visiting that house was the only relief I had. I'd spend entire weekends there, sleeping on a futon in Josh's cluttered office, just to get away from the endless arguing and door slamming that filled our home. That little rental on a quiet street in Maplebridge, it felt like another world. Everything was calmer, cleaner. Josh was funny and easygoing. Natalie felt like herself again, and their roommate Brian added this laid-back energy to the place. He was always cooking something weird, leaving notes on the fridge like, "Don't eat the green curry, it's haunted." But there were 2 others living there too, and that's when things started to feel off. Derek and Lena. I didn't pay much attention to them at first. They mostly kept to themselves, holed up in Derek's room at the end of the upstairs hall. I figured they were introverts, or maybe just socially weird. Derek was 28, but looked older in that drained, greasy way people get when they live off energy drinks and sit in front of a computer screen all day. Lena was 24, I think. She had long, dark hair that always looked damp, like she'd just stepped out of the shower. But what stood out most was that she never spoke. Not once. I mean that literally. Not to me, not to Natalie, not even a polite nod when I said hi. She'd look right through me, her eyes kind of glassy, distant, and walk away like I wasn't there. I should have been weirded out, but I was used to silence. I'd learned early on how to shrink myself at home, to move quietly, to avoid triggering Steve's temper. Lena's blank stares and silence barely registered compared to that. And besides, I wasn't there for them. I was just trying to survive the weekends. The office I stayed in was downstairs, right next to the half bath. It was small and cramped, filled with computer gear and cables, but I didn't care. That bathroom, though, it was awful. No real shower, just a stained old tub and a limp curtain hanging from a crooked rod. Weirdly, Lena always used that one. Even though the upstairs bathroom was way nicer, she'd come downstairs to bathe. I figured she was just particular or quirky and didn't press it. That was my mistake. Natalie told me later that Derek was the one they found on a roommate site. He was quiet, paid rent on time, didn't throw parties. Lena wasn't on the lease. She just showed up one day and stayed. No one really questioned it. She didn't cause problems. She just existed in this eerie, silent way. We were too trusting, Natalie said years later. We wanted to believe people were good. That was our flaw. Brian, the other roommate, had his doubts early on. He told me much later, after everything, that he'd once caught Derek watching me from the hallway when he thought no one was around. Just standing there, staring. But back then, we didn't piece it together. One weekend in April, I stayed over to work on a school project. I had papers scattered across the desk, headphones on, my laptop humming. I was half delirious on caffeine and Pop-Tarts, barely noticing time pass. I heard the water shut off in the bathroom, but it barely registered. Probably Lena. She always took long showers. I kept working. 10 minutes later, something made me look up. Maybe a shift in air, a feeling. The door to the office was cracked open, just a sliver, and in that gap I saw her, Lena, completely naked, standing in the hallway watching me. She wasn't moving, just there. Her eyes locked on mine. No expression, no blink, just silence. I froze. My throat tightened. "Lena," I whispered. No answer. She just turned slowly and walked away, disappearing down the hall like she hadn't done anything unusual. I sat there for a long time, staring at the door. My pulse was thudding in my ears. I told myself I was hallucinating, that I was exhausted, sleep-deprived, imagining things. I didn't tell Natalie. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't explain it. But after that night, I started wedging a chair under the doorknob when I slept. It wasn't fear exactly. It was instinct, some primal alarm going off in my body that my brain couldn't rationalize. A month later, Brian said something odd. He was annoyed because he'd found fingerprints, smudges on the outside of the office window. My window, the one that faced the street. "The blinds don't fully close," he said, frowning. Could have been a drunk neighbor or some kid messing around. Still, weird. Josh ended up calling the non-emergency line just in case. But there wasn't much to go on. No cameras, no witnesses. Still, the mood in the house shifted, like we all started holding our breath without realizing it. Josh installed cameras the following week, motion-triggered ones aimed at every entry point, every ground-level window. He even added an indoor cam in the hallway that all the bedrooms branched off from. Just in case, he said. Natalie told me later they'd meant to give Derek and Lena a heads up about the indoor cam, but the two of them had gone out of town for the long weekend and they just forgot. By the time summer rolled around, I wasn't staying over as much. Things had cooled down with Steve, temporarily, and I was spending more time with friends, trying to be a normal teenager. I didn't think about Maplebridge much until one humid afternoon in July when I showed up unannounced and found the whole energy of the house different. Derek's room was empty, completely cleared out. Derek and Lena moved out, Natalie said, like she was announcing a package delivery. What? Why? She looked at Josh, who gave her a silent go-ahead. Then she said flatly, "Because they're fucking weirdos. And honestly, we should have kicked them out months ago." And that's when the whole story came out. Josh had been scrolling through footage from the hallway cam one night, not even looking for anything, just half bored, checking timestamps. That's when he saw her. Lena. Emerging from the bathroom after her usual late-night showers, creeping barefoot down the hallway, stopping just outside the office door. My door. The door I kept cracked open until that one night. She would just stand there, watching, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes longer, 20, 30, just staring through the sliver of open door, her face tilted like she was listening for something, or waiting. Josh was horrified. Sick, he told me. He couldn't stop thinking about it. So he started digging, went back through older clips, and there she was, again and again. Every weekend I'd stayed over, Lena was there, watching me sleep. But that wasn't the worst of it. The outdoor cam near the office window, it caught Derek, standing out on the lawn, tucked in the shadows, peering through the glass. He wasn't there every night, but enough. Enough times to track my patterns. When I changed clothes, when the lights went off, when I was vulnerable. Josh and Brian confronted them while Natalie was out. When she heard what happened, she almost broke the coffee table in fury. Brian described the scene later. He and Josh stormed into Derek's room, no warnings, just demands. What the hell is wrong with you? Why were you watching her? That kind of thing, and that's when they saw it. My clothes. Shirts I thought I'd misplaced, folded neatly on Derek's bed like souvenirs. And drawings, dozens of them, of me, sleeping. One tacked to the wall, another beside his lamp, others stacked in a drawer. They'd even written poems, handwritten pages full of obsessively looped letters, my name underlined over and over. They didn't let me see those. I didn't ask to. But the final straw? Footage from the kitchen. Lena, captured on camera, silently spitting into my drink while I was in the other room. No emotion, just a little smirk. On another night, Derek was filmed licking the apples I kept in the fridge, then pouring regular milk into my lactose-free bottle. No one had told me why I kept getting sick during those visits. Josh gave them 2 hours to get out. No cops, just a blunt ultimatum: leave or the police get the footage. They left. Fast. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But months later, Natalie and I were sitting on the porch with a bottle of wine. The night was still, humid, crickets buzzing under the steps. She stared at her glass for a while before saying, "You remember that weekend you threw up all night?" "Yeah. It wasn't your stomach," she said. "It was them." I froze. "We didn't tell you because you were already shaken. We didn't want to traumatize you more than you already were." I asked her what else they saw. She didn't speak right away. Then, "They used to talk about you, when they thought no one was home. Whisper about your hair, your skin, how pure you looked." I felt something shift inside me, like a part of my body dropped into ice. "They said things I won't repeat," she added. "You don't want to know." But I did know. I could feel it. I could feel the sick hunger of it in hindsight. How Lena never blinked when she looked at me. How Derek's eyes always seemed to follow even when I pretended not to notice. They had built a fantasy, a whole narrative in their heads, and I'd been cast in it without consent, without knowledge. I'm 20 now. I've had years to digest it, to examine every little red flag I'd ignored, every chill I dismissed, every moment that felt off but I shrugged away. And the worst part? If Josh hadn't installed those cameras, if Natalie hadn't told me, I never would have known. I would have thought I'd just been clumsy with my milk, that my stomach was sensitive, that maybe I had imagined Lena in the hallway. But it was real, all of it. And I think about what could have happened if I'd stayed one more night, if the door hadn't been locked, if they'd waited until everyone else was asleep. Even now, I wedge chairs under hotel doorknobs. I scan every window before I sleep. I won't drink anything I didn't pour myself. Sometimes people ask me why I'm so on edge, why I never spend the night at someone's place, why I decline food unless I made it. I just say, had some bad roommates once. But it was more than that. It was a slow, deliberate violation of my space, my safety, my body, and I will never let that happen again. I didn't move to Little Bridge hoping to start some bright new chapter. I just needed somewhere to land, somewhere stable enough to stop everything else from falling apart. It was late summer 2016 when I left behind my ex, a job I'd grown to hate, and most of my belongings. I packed what I could into the back of my Corolla and drove 2 hours south, looking for anything that resembled a reset. I had barely enough saved for a room deposit. The listing I found was nothing remarkable. Just a few blurry photos on a rental site. A quiet residential street, newly remodeled house, rent surprisingly low. The ad read, "Looking for one roommate. Must be respectful and clean. No smoking. Room available immediately." That was it. No frills, no personality. Just straightforward, which, honestly, I appreciated. The guy who posted it was named David. He looked to be mid-30s when we met. He greeted me at the door with a handshake, polite, but almost too controlled. He wore a faded gray polo shirt tucked neatly into black slacks, like he'd just come from a job interview. His short blondish-brown hair was trimmed close, military neat, and the wireframe glasses perched on his nose gave him this understated academic vibe. My first impression? High school math teacher, or maybe someone who ran spreadsheets for a living. The house itself was cleaner than I expected. Not big, but tidy. 3 bedrooms. A narrow hallway divided the kitchen and living room from the back half of the house. The walls were a fresh pale blue, and most of the furniture looked like recent IKEA builds. Sharp edges, light wood, still smelling faintly of varnish. Just as I was about to sign the lease, pen in hand, David said almost too casually, "Basement's off limits." I paused. "Oh?" He nodded, that smile flickering. "I use it for work. Private projects. Please just respect that boundary." Something about the way he said it. It wasn't hostile, but it lacked warmth entirely, like he'd rehearsed the line. But I was desperate. I forced a smile and said, "Sure, no problem." At first it was fine, better than fine. David, on paper, was the perfect housemate. Quiet, courteous, paid bills without reminders, never threw parties, never drank. Always calm, unnervingly so. He said he worked in software development and mostly worked from home. His car, a completely nondescript gray sedan, left the driveway maybe twice a week. It was almost too quiet, but after the chaos I'd just left behind, the stillness felt like a gift. But little things started gnawing at me. The basement door didn't have a knob. Not just locked, modified. A thick deadbolt bolted from the inside. And the only other way in? A steel bulkhead door behind the house, padlocked. I only ever saw it open once, barely a few inches, but what leaked out wasn't air. It was something sharp and wrong. Not rotten, not exactly. It was metallic, sterile, layered with the faint sting of bleach. And something beneath that, something warmer, something that clung to the back of the throat. One evening, when we crossed paths in the kitchen, I asked, "So, what kind of stuff do you work on down there?" He didn't hesitate. 3D printing, some chemistry, just a hobby, nothing dangerous. And he smiled. That same thin smile. I was starting to notice a pattern. David always smiled when he was lying. His curiosity about me began to surface more and more. Always framed as casual conversation, but consistent, insistent. "You off today?" he'd ask, pouring coffee. "Heading anywhere this weekend? You still going to the gym on Tuesdays?" He asked often enough that I started keeping mental notes. It never sounded intrusive, not outright. But it wasn't normal either. I chalked it up to social awkwardness until the day I came home sick. I hadn't told anyone. Just called off, drove straight home, curled up on the couch. Sometime mid-morning I heard movement, garage door creaking, heavy steps in the hall. Then David appeared mid-stride and froze when he saw me. "You're home?" he said, voice sharp. I sat up. "Yeah, called in sick." There was a beat of silence, too long. Then he pasted on that smile again. "Hope you feel better." But something in his face didn't reset. His eyes stayed wide, his jaw too tight. He looked caught, like a man mid-act. That night, I barely slept. Around 2 a.m., I heard something from the garage. Not a mechanical clank, but more primal, metal dragging, something heavy shifting. Then maybe voices, muffled, low. I sat in bed, heart thudding against my ribs, ears straining. I checked the driveway. His car was still there, but when I crept down the hall, his bedroom door was wide open. His bed was untouched. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, he was already in the kitchen, calm, smiling, offered me coffee like nothing had happened, asked about the weather, commented on the birds outside the window. Too normal. So normal it felt staged. Another time I was doing laundry in the garage when the smell hit me. Thick and sudden, like a slap to the face. It was the kind of scent that doesn't belong anywhere near a suburban house. Earthy, sweet, and wrong. The scent of something long dead. My stomach twisted instantly. I grew up in a rural town where roadkill was common and people hunted deer. I know what death smells like. This was it. That evening when I saw David in the kitchen rinsing out a mug, I tried to make light of it, to push through the creeping unease. "Hey," I said, forcing a grin. "You really ought to clean up better after the bodies." He froze. His face drained of color so fast it startled me. Not a twitch of amusement, no chuckle, no rolling of the eyes. Just this blank, pale stare. His lips parted slightly. "What?" he said, dead serious. I held his gaze, my grin fading. "The garage stinks. Just saying." There was a long pause. His eyes didn't move. I could almost hear him calculating something. Finally, he said, "Thanks for letting me know," and turned without another word. He disappeared into his room and didn't come out again that night. From that moment on, something broke. He started unraveling, quickly. He began using something, though I never saw what. His pupils would dilate strangely at night. Sometimes his hands shook while pouring coffee. He'd talk to himself under his breath, fragmented nonsense, or launch into monologues about the collapse of society. "People are just meat with opinions," he told me once, out of nowhere, while watching the news. His voice was calm, detached. That's all. Meat pretending it matters. He spoke about women, particularly sex workers, in a tone that made my skin crawl. "They're not people to most folks," he said one morning while making eggs. "You can do anything to them. No one cares." That was the last time I ate anything while he was in the room. He started blasting music or NPR late into the night, volume high enough to shake the glass panes in the windows. When I asked him to turn it down, he'd smile and apologize sweetly. Didn't realize it was that loud. But I knew better. It wasn't accidental. It was cover. Then one night, I was in the garage switching over laundry when he opened a panel near the back wall, revealing a crawl space I didn't even know existed. A low, narrow opening, hidden in shadow. "Hey," he called out casually, like he was asking me to check out a new shelf. "Come up here, I want to show you something." I froze. Everything in my body screamed no. My hands went clammy. I forced a shaky laugh and said, "Actually, I've got to run an errand first. Rain check?" I didn't wait for a response. I walked straight back to my room, grabbed my backpack, stuffed in clothes, a charger, anything I could grab, and drove to a friend's apartment across town. I didn't tell him I was coming. Just showed up at the door, pale and wired, and crashed on his couch. When I came back the next morning, because I had no real choice yet, David was in the kitchen eating cereal, calm as ever, like nothing had happened. But I could feel it in the air. The shift, the tension, a quiet acknowledgement between us. The game was up. From then on, he didn't bother to hide much. He'd watch violent pornography on the living room TV late at night, assuming I was asleep. I'd wake up to the high-pitched cries of women, edited, looped, distorted, screams layered under industrial noise, the kind of audio that felt like it could reach inside your head and twist something loose. One night he showed me a video he'd made himself. I didn't ask to see it. He just pulled out his phone and said, "Check this out." It was a rapid-fire montage. Women tied up in rope, butchered meat being cut, flashes of fire, static. A man in a plague doctor mask walking slowly toward the camera. I felt my stomach drop. "This is messed up," I said quietly. He didn't blink. "It's art," he said. That was the night I started keeping a kitchen knife tucked under my mattress. I began locking my door religiously, slept with headphones in, just so I wouldn't have to hear anything from beyond the walls. I made a plan to get out, but I needed to wait for payday. I told him I was moving out. He didn't ask why. Just looked at me and said, "When?" "Tomorrow morning." That night, he got high again. I could hear him outside on the back porch, muttering to himself, pacing. I kept the lights off in my room, didn't move, didn't breathe loud. Around midnight, there was a soft knock at my door. Then his voice, low, like he was telling me a secret. "You know they'll never catch me," he said. "I'm the kind of guy no one suspects." A pause. "They won't even know what to look for." I didn't answer. I didn't even move. I left at first light, eyes wide from lack of sleep, heart racing the entire drive. For weeks I couldn't shake the guilt, the feeling that something terrible was happening in that house, and I'd just left it behind. I kept thinking about that crawl space, the smells, the sounds, the things he said. What if someone else moved in? Eventually I called Crime Stoppers. I used a payphone, did it anonymously. I gave them everything, his full name, David Foster, the house on Langston Street, the trailer that had suddenly appeared in the driveway just a few months after I left, the smell, the videos, the phrases he repeated like mantras. The woman on the line went quiet for a while, asked me to hold. Then someone else picked up, a man this time. He started asking specific questions. He was interested, very interested. I haven't heard anything since. Every once in a while I check the address online. The house is still listed, 3-bed, 2-bath. The Google Street View still shows the trailer out front, parked like it never moved. No news stories, no arrests, just stillness. I don't know if he was ever caught. Maybe there was nothing to catch. Maybe he was just a disturbed man playing a long, dangerous game. But I've known addicts, ex-cons, violent people. None of them left a mark on me the way David did. Make of it what you want. But I pray no one else moves into that house without knowing who still walks its halls. I never hated dogs. Not at first. I actually grew up loving them. Like deeply loving them. Our family always had one or two around. Sleepy old retrievers who'd nap beside the fireplace. Stubborn basset hounds who'd bay at passing cars, and the occasional foster mutt we took in for a few weeks until my parents admitted we couldn't afford another mouth to feed. To me, dogs were just uncomplicated, loyal, dopey, full of love. It never occurred to me that something about them could one day make my skin crawl. So when I moved out of my cramped studio apartment and into a house with a guy named Tyler, the fact that he owned 4 dogs honestly made the place seem even more appealing. I'd met Tyler through a coworker and the timing couldn't have been better. My lease was expiring, rent prices were brutal, and his offer sounded like a dream. A room in a house on the outskirts of Austin, quiet and wooded, way out where the streets faded into cedar and mesquite. No sirens, no honking, no paper-thin walls and yelling neighbors. Just peace. If I could undo that decision now, I wouldn't hesitate. I'd undo it 1,000 times over. Tyler was peculiar. Not in a creepy way, just slightly off-center. He was in his early 30s, worked IT freelance from home, and had a girlfriend named Jessica who was around more often than not. He struck me as one of those hardcore practical types, prepping for power outages, stocking up on dry goods, storing gallons of filtered water in neat rows in the garage. He wasn't unpleasant, just hyper-prepared, efficient. I figured he probably listened to a lot of survival podcasts. "And the dogs?" I'd asked when we were going over house details. He'd waved the question off like it was nothing. The first day I moved in, though, he pulled me aside. "Hey," he said, leaning against the counter while I dragged boxes through the kitchen. "Quick thing about the dogs, I need you not to mess with them." I chuckled, assuming he was joking. He wasn't. His face was flat, serious. "They don't like new people," he continued. "They're only calm around me and Jess. If you try to pet them, they might freak out. Just don't go near them. Don't feed them. Don't talk to them. Don't even look at them too long." It sounded extreme, but I thought maybe they were rescues with trauma or badly socialized. Who knows? I wasn't in a position to ask too many questions. The rent was $500 a month for a private room and shared bath, and I was flat broke. The dog stayed mostly out of sight, either shut in his room or out in the backyard, which stretched nearly half an acre and was fenced in tight. I'd hear them sometimes late at night. Not normal barking. This was low, savage stuff, growling, snarling, like they were pacing, hunting something that wasn't there. But they never came inside when I was home, and that was enough. That arrangement worked for about 3 months. Then came the weekend everything fell apart. Tyler and Jessica were heading out to Louisiana to visit her family. He gave me a heads up the week before. "Just so you know," he said, "we'll be gone Friday through Monday. I'm leaving the dogs in the backyard. They've got an auto feeder and a water system. It's all set up. Just don't go out there, leave them be, and everything will be fine." "Yeah, no problem," I replied. What else could I say? I wasn't about to argue over animals that weren't mine. Friday morning, I made coffee and stared out the kitchen window. The dogs were already outside, pacing. All 4 of them, enormous German shepherds, bigger than any I'd seen in person. They weren't running or playing. They were moving slow and deliberate. One of them stopped and stared right at me through the glass, locked eyes. The others followed. It felt like they were studying me. My stomach tightened. I turned away and shook it off. I figured I was just tired. I left for work around 8. I freelance as a product photographer, so I had a shoot that day. On location, lots of gear, ran long. Afterwards, I hit the gym for a quick session and didn't get home till close to 6:30. The second I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. No barking, no nails clicking across the floor. Just silence, and this pressure in the air. Like the atmosphere had changed, thicker, heavier. I stepped into the kitchen and froze. Glass covered the tile floor, glinting in the last slant of sunset. The sliding door to the backyard was shattered. Not cracked, obliterated. The frame was warped like something massive had plowed straight through it. My brain couldn't even form a thought at first. Then the panic hit, cold and sudden, like being dropped in an ice bath. I turned to run, instinct alone, and heard it. A growl. Low. Close. So close it felt like it vibrated in my bones. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just ran. Claws skittered on the hardwood behind me, fast and scrambling. I charged up the stairs 2 at a time, adrenaline drowning out everything but the thudding of my heart. Don't fall. Don't fall. That was the only thing I could think. If I fell, it was over. I made it to my room, slammed the door, locked it, pressed my whole body against it. No phone. I'd left it in my gym bag, still in the car. I turned to the window, hoping I could scream for help, but instantly remembered where we were. A mile from the main road. Nearest neighbor, 2 pastures away. No one was coming. I was alone. Trapped. I sat down hard against the door, lungs burning, heart racing. The silence pressed in again. Thicker now. More sinister. Every sound felt too loud. My breath. My pulse. Then, bam! Something massive slammed into the door, hard enough to rattle the hinges. I flinched, grabbed the base of the desk lamp like it could help somehow. And then, silence again. Just the sound of something breathing on the other side. The frame groaned under the pressure, then another slam. Harder. More violent. This time it was followed by the unmistakable sound of claws, scraping, frantic. a chaotic rhythm of nails raking across wood as if they were trying to dig through the door. It was primal, desperate. I backed away, whispering, "Oh my God," like a chant. My voice shook. My legs were barely holding me up. I had only seen one of them when I came in. But what if all four were inside now? I didn't know how they'd gotten in, didn't know how long they'd been loose. Maybe they were hunting together. Maybe they were already surrounding me. The door shuddered again, louder, closer, more violent. I ran. The connected bathroom was only a few feet away, and I slammed the door shut behind me, locking it with a trembling hand. It wasn't much, but it was something. Another barrier. I didn't let myself stop to breathe. I scrambled up onto the counter, pulled my knees to my chest, and clutched the edge with fingers so tight they ached. My knuckles were white. That's when I saw it. A window. Small. Just above the sink. Maybe 2 feet wide, 3 feet tall. Barely enough to squeeze through. But maybe enough. I didn't waste time thinking. I slid off the counter and shoved it open. The hinges creaked. I threw myself up, twisting and contorting to wedge my body through. My shoulders jammed. My hips caught. And for a second I thought I was stuck. But adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I forced myself forward, scraping my head against the upper frame. My knee slammed into a protruding screw and tore a jagged hole through my jeans and through me. But I didn't stop. I dropped hard onto the shingled roof outside, rolled once, then pressed myself flat behind the chimney, gasping. I kept low, out of view from the window. My chest was heaving. My whole body shook. That's when I felt it. A sharp, hot sting pulsing behind my left leg. I reached down, blood, soaking through the back of my calf. Not a scratch. A bite. Deep. Wide. The adrenaline had masked it until now, but once I saw it, the pain surged in like fire under my skin. I bit my lip so hard I tasted copper, stripped off my flannel shirt and tied it tight around the wound. The knot was clumsy, but I didn't have time to be precise. Night fell fast. The air turned cold and the wind picked up, whispering through the trees. The stars overhead blinked down like a million indifferent eyes. Silent. Still. I was alone. No food. No phone. No one knew where I was. Below me I could hear them. The sound of claws again. Clicking on hardwood. Pacing. Stalking. Every now and then, a bark cut through the quiet like a knife. Then a snarl. Something heavy crashed. Furniture being knocked over? A door? They were still looking for me. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I started to nod off, a sound would jolt me awake. A growl, a scrape, the wind shifting just right. My thoughts frayed. Time stretched. I don't remember how many times I cried. I lasted 2.5 days on that roof. There was a garden hose attached to a spigot near the edge, probably installed to rinse off leaves or debris. I drank from it when I got too dizzy. I didn't eat. I didn't dare leave the roof. Hunger became dull. The fear didn't. By the end, I was hallucinating. I heard voices. Tyler's, Jessica's, even my mom's. I thought I saw birds flying by, but the sky was empty. I kept waiting for sirens, for footsteps, for anything to break the silence. But it was the kind of silence that rings in your ears. The kind that makes you feel like the world forgot you. Then, finally, Monday morning, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A car pulled into the driveway. Doors opened. Voices drifted up. I couldn't speak. I just started crying. Ugly, shaking sobs. My throat hurt. My head throbbed. Tyler's voice came first. "What the hell happened?" Jessica gasped. "Tyler, oh my God, she's on the roof." They moved quickly. Tyler called the dogs. They came without hesitation, calm as anything. He ushered them back into his bedroom like this was just another Tuesday. Then he climbed up, helped me back through the bathroom window I'd escaped from. His hands were shaking. When I showed him the bite on my leg, the color drained from his face. "Shit," he whispered. "Shit, I'm so sorry." I thought they'd be fine. But the apology didn't last. As soon as I said I needed to go to the hospital, something in his face changed. His posture stiffened. His eyes darted. "Hey," he started, rubbing the back of his neck. Maybe you don't have to say the dogs did it. I mean, it could have been the glass, right?" I stared at him. "No," I said, my voice low. "One of them bit me. I'm not lying to the hospital." He didn't argue after that, just went quiet. Animal control showed up later that afternoon, after I'd been stitched, dosed with antibiotics, and started the rabies vaccine. Tyler didn't speak to me. Not a word. Just watched. They took all 4 dogs. After evaluations, 2 were labeled too aggressive to be rehabilitated. They were euthanized. The other 2 were sent to a specialized rescue that deals with high-risk animals. Tyler didn't forgive me. Said I lied. Said I murdered his family. That I'd made it all up to punish him. But I didn't lie. And honestly, if I hadn't gotten out when I did, if I'd hesitated, I don't think I'd be alive right now to write this. I don't fully blame the dogs. Not really. They were territorial, conditioned, built to obey one person. Tyler never should have left them unsupervised, not like that. Not in a shared space, not in a home where they weren't trained to accept anyone else. I moved out the same week, packed only what I could carry and left the rest behind. Now I live in a small city apartment. I have 2 cats. They don't bark, they don't bite, and they don't stare at me like they're waiting for a command I'll never give. Maybe someday I'll be able to see a dog and not flinch, but not yet, maybe not ever. If there's a lesson in all this, it's simple. Never trust a man who tells you not to go near his dogs, especially if he won't tell you why.